and welcome to Define Roots. My name is Dan. Today, it is time to open up and shift the perspective a little bit because I've been trying to find my angle when it comes to my development in life. And when I say my angle, it's kind of like at which angle do I fit into? Which angle is my lane? So, in other words, if I was a car, which lane do I drive in? What kind of road condition would I drive in? What kind of car am I? So let's say that my podcast, where is my lane and which lane do I drive in? So today is rather going to be more of a self-reflection, rather, and I'd like to share a couple of things. So this is going to be me switching lane, and the aspect that I want to share about in this podcast is essentially my greatest achievements. And in all, I feel like a lot of events that kind of framed around the world is about possessions. So like let's say, having a car, nice car, luxury, money. Not to say that any of these achievements are wrong or bad. There are achievements, and I would greatly want to achieve those things uh, sometime. But rather, as of this moment right now, I feel like my greatest achievements is rather the things that I managed to overcome and accomplish. And those things that I managed to overcome is quite a bit. So today I'm gonna share just one of them, or maybe two. So starting off with my first one was being shy and being not comfortable in my own skin. And it is a strange thing to come to realize because when I went through college and high school, there was always like this feeling of be confident. But I didn't really understand what it meant to be confident. And it almost felt like you just had to somehow draw the power within you. Um, Kind of like, I don't know, the closest reference I can think of is kind of like telling a kid to lift a 20 pound or 100 pound, like just do it. You have the strength within you. But really, what it comes down to now that I kind of reflect back on that is that that strength is built upon. You cannot tell a kid to lift 100 pound. And the same thing goes with confidence. You have to build that. So now that I think back to my time of being insecure and not confident in my own skin, was because I didn't have the opportunity to build those things. I didn't have the chance to actually um, like feel confident in myself. I didn't have the knowledge and the wisdom of myself to feel confident because confidence comes down to knowledge. Do I know myself? And this was the one thing that I felt like I envied a lot of people in high school or in my life was people who just knew themselves and who just seemed to just know who they are. And those were the ones that I envied, not the ones that had the flashiest item or the car or the most expensive things. I could care less about those things. But now, this is all me saying, looking back into myself when I was maybe in my teens. And it was just something about the people that just had knowledge. They were just themselves, like unapologetically themselves. They didn't have any problem with other people judging them. And I thought to myself, man, I want to be like that. Yeah, I want to be, I want to know myself to the point where I can just be me. I don't have to put on this mask on like being this person or being playing a certain role in this game. And I never liked that because it just kind of felt artificial. So being confident, going again, is now that I realize is that it all comes down to building confidence, not being. Because when I built my confidence, in other words, I built the knowledge of myself, I can now become myself because I know myself. So again, if I if someone told a kid to lift 100 pounds, obviously he cannot do it. But oh, there are ants crawling. But in other words, if we were to say that to train the kid to eventually over time being able to lift 100 pound. So today, let's say the challenge is to lift 1 pound, and then two, and then three, and eventually over time, the kid will acquire enough strength to be able to lift 100 pounds. But the strength, there's a lot of ants. But the strength simply does not come out of nowhere. It has to be built. So just like confidence, it has to be built upon the knowledge of myself. Like it's not like out of nowhere I know myself. That is unless I grew up with such conscious, but I didn't. Some people just have that conscious growing up because they are allowed to have that conscious. They are in an environment with such consciousness. They are bred in such environment where you have to be yourself. There's no other way of existing without being yourself. But where I came from, it's rather like a defense mechanism to not be yourself, because this is where the chameleon comes into play. Um, and growing up, I moved a lot, so I had to blend into different environments. Now, if you're telling me to be myself in all those environments as a kid, bullying, and that would mean danger, because I can't just be confident in myself and start like acting like I own the world in front of these kids, because kids are vicious. So I learned quickly that I had to adapt to my environment and have like this being able to switch almost like identity to blend into an environment. So being myself was not an option. And this wasn't until like later in my life where I felt like I could finally shed off that mask and embrace and become myself, who I truly was. And it wasn't like it's always there. It's more so like shedding off the mask, and then it reveals the true me. So I think of it kind of like an onion. So you have a lot of layers. So I would like peel off the layers and the defense mechanism that I built over time. So example is like being cool or dressing in a certain way, talking in a certain way, and behaving in a certain way. Those were the behaviors that I picked up along the way to survive. And yeah, it allowed me to blend in pretty well, and to be liked was uh, was the main objective, because I didn't want to be bullied or want to um, be a target. So if I blend into my environment, there was a higher chance of me to not be on the radar. So that was my um, upbringing and the challenges of being confident. And again, it all came from knowing myself, building upon the knowledge of myself, meaning what do I like, what do I don't like, and over time expressing those things because it's like if there are certain things that happens to me that I don't like and that I let it just kind of slide over me, then I don't have enough confidence to let's say confess that or to express that because of confession, not confession, what's the word I'm looking for here? Confrontational, because of I'm not strong enough to hold my ground as myself and strong enough to hold my ground to defend who I am. So a lot of times I just let it bend, and I quickly realized that if I let things like that bend over time, um, that would eventually cause dents all around myself. And let's say like I would let things like that slide, for instance, a couple times. So let's say someone called me a certain word or treated me in a certain way, and I would think to myself, oh, it's okay. But that it's okay over time becomes more and more, um, like you could say, feel belittled or maybe feel more, um, I don't know the right way to say this, but rather it is like it doesn't represent who you are. And it's kind of like not belittling, but it feels, I'm just gonna say belittle. So kind of like it feels like someone is projecting the wrong light onto you. And over time, who I am does not represent who I am anymore. Because over time, I say it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And it is not until the point where I built enough knowledge where I was like, you know what? It's not okay. It's not okay. Please don't do that. But if that situation persists, then I just have to remove myself from that situation because I cannot bend the wills of others. So the best thing to do is just to remove myself from the situation. Uh, and so that's confidence. And the one thing that I wish that someone had told me about confidence is that it's built. It's not, you don't just find it and then you just acquire it. It's built upon. Like any house, you need a strong foundation. So building confidence comes from like little by little knowing oneself and acquiring those knowledge and eventually at some point becoming so confident in ourselves because we know ourselves so much that it is a solid foundation. There's no question about whether or not I like crowded places. I don't like crowded places. I've been there, I've done that, and I have, and I know it because I've been through it. And it's not like a question whether or not I like it or not. It's like I don't. But even if I were to be put in a situation of a big crowd, I still manage because I wouldn't be in the crowd. I'll be outside of the crowd. So it would be like I know myself, so I can position myself in a way that makes me feel comfortable. Um, Even if I'm uncomfortable, I will respond in a way that would make me feel comfortable. For instance, if I was put on the spot and my first reaction would be to say something that comes to my mind, but I know that when I do that, it is like I don't feel comfortable by just randomly blurring out things because afterward I will feel like shit. So essentially, in those situations, I would rather take my time to kind of think for the amount of time that I have and then engage in whatever that is happening. Um, Whether I'm put on the spot or diffuse the situation and remove myself from the situation and not um, let the, let's say, the tide control me, but rather I ride the tide. Um, So one is being helpless when the tide happens, and two, you just ride the tide, slightly outweigh, and be gone. um, and things like that. So confidence is something that's built upon. And the one mantra that have kept me going and remember this is that a kid cannot lift 100 pounds, but if you tell him to lift 1 pound, he could do it. And over time, if you tell the same kid to lift 2 pounds, you could probably do it. 3, 4, you go on to a year or two, he can probably lift like 50 pounds. You keep going, and eventually at some point, he'll be able to lift 100 pounds. So it's not about just pulling that confidence out of thin air, but rather it is built upon over time. And that goes with anything. Um, so essentially, that is going to be the new angle of Define Roots. Just sharing perspectives and sharing my viewpoints. Um, but yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Cheers.